This story is brought to you by tapeatale.com.
109. The irony. It was late that morning as I rubbed my eyes. My school was at 7 and it was 6:35. But I somehow managed to enter the class. Because when you're a high school senior, there's nothing that you can't surpass. I used to sit on the last bench in the third row in a little corner of my infinity, writing letters, verses, and proses to my own little infinity. But that day, everything I started writing went undone. It felt like I was missing someone. So I glared through the class and I couldn't find her. Now she was the one I'd known for 5 years and it felt like forever. My closest friend and my puppy face. My superwoman in many ways. But her attendance had a nil for 3 straight days. This baffled with my mind as I lost my hold, miffed with every minute trying to gain control, and I waited for the bell to ring. It rang and I went back home. I dialed her number as I picked up my phone. 3 days. Mind you, it's long. And surprisingly, on the other side, it was her mom. Auntie, how are you? Absolute silence. Silence. This was something new. This was so not her because she was the one who lightened up my mood like my second mother, and I couldn't register this within me. So my next question was, where is she? She said, she is in the hospital. I crumbled into pieces like I was so brittle with my heart so little, but I had to get back. My friend was in the hospital. I had to get back. I got back, I packed up my bag, I ordered a cab, and I hurled through the hospital gate like I'd created a crime. There stood a nurse to whom I asked, where is she? And she said, he's in 109. I started walking towards that room. Fighting aisles and corridors filled with gloom, I saw Auntie sitting there. I asked her, Auntie, what's wrong? She did not say a word, held her poise, and kept chanting the prudent song. Now walked my way towards the room, where I was stopped by a nurse again, who said, don't you dare, as she pointed towards the board above the door, which read 109, intensive care. She told me, your friend is asleep. Kindly wait for 30 minutes and sit on that seat. 30 minutes felt like hours before she opened the gate and let me pass. Now, what I saw made me sore. It ripped my spine and it wrecked my core. It was blood flushed and white tile. Her legs were hanging in air and her back was upright. Bruises and creases all over her skin, which would gleam otherwise. Her neck couldn't swivel. She was half paralyzed. She closed her eyes as I sat beside her. I held her hand, which felt like fur, and she smiled. She smiled exactly like I'd prefer. I asked her, what happened to my sweet little child? She told me she was taken and smothered in the wild. And now, when I compelled her to tell me more, she told me a story from behind a door. This is what she said. Through those holes in my door, I could see something but couldn't tell. I was being threatened but couldn't yell. Every time I wished to see through the dark, I found a set of people who were ready to give me a buck. The very next moment, I lose my sight. They pick me up and they hold me tight. And I hear a third against the ground. It made me oblivious due to its sound, but it was a rod. I could tell. Because when you're blinded, your senses work well. It's hot, rubbed in coal. It makes me numb and my body cold. And they prick it in me. I cry to my wits, and they corner me in splits. I could feel the pain and even felt the burn. But those morons kept taking their turns. Maybe, maybe it was a scar on my gender that we ladies always had to surrender. Now, as she was speaking, her heart started to pound. I too lost my patience and I crippled through the ground. I went towards the nurse to ask her for a daily dose, to which she gave me a list of medicines to get from the store. I rushed down, I took the ones required, I came back to the first floor. But she asked me to wait. She asked me to wait because doctor wasn't there to operate. I stood there for 10 minutes, the worst 10 minutes of my life, because every moment I felt someone was stabbing me with a knife. The doctor came out and he refrained from speaking a word. This was something I couldn't infer, so I begged him, please, please. He patted on my back, looked towards the ground, and sadly said, I'm sorry. We couldn't save her. She was gone. I was all alone. I fell down on the floor because I never wanted someone to tell me that she was no more. It took a lot of time, a lot of crying. But days go by, you grow a little old. Still, there are some ironies which hold. One, the culprit, who should have been caught and sentenced for his life, was now running out in open, chasing your daughter, your sister, maybe your future wife. Two, 109 is the same number you dial for women helpline against violence. That day, that number muted my friends' silence. I still pass through that hospital on some days, finding the biggest irony of my life in many ways. I entered that hospital gate again, filled with pain. Now, as I was passing through the corridors, I heard some babies cry. I went close to them and I made expressions. Maybe they would smile. They were newly borns, kept in cots and arranged in a line. A minute later, I raised my eyebrows to read. The room was 109. The same room which took away my sweet little child now gave rise to many more beautiful lives. Now gave rise to many more beautiful lives.